We're on Daf Nun Dal. Chazarnu. This is Rav's statement. I'll call Stodim Shal Rabbi Meir. We looked at all Rabbi Meir's statements in Hilchos Hegdesh. V'lo matzinu, we didn't find in any place that Rabbi Meir makes this distinction. And he holds that if he's motzi mos of Hegdesh b'shogeg ein ha-Hegdesh mischalel, but b'mezid mischalel. So it means that based on our research, argues Rav, Rabbi Meir would hold that whether or not it's shogeg or mezid makes no difference. There's always me'ilah, and therefore there's always chilul hadamim. Ayu Mishnah Seinu. In the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir was the one who says that the Kiddushin is not valid in the case of Shigas Hegdesh. Why is it not valid? If you tell me Bein B'Shogeg, Bein B'Mezid and Hegdesh, it's always Mischalel. So why in the case of Shigas Hegdesh does Rabbi Meir say that the Kiddushin is not valid if it's Moses? And again, until now we said it's because of Mekal Tov. And it depends on him, depends on her, blah, blah, blah. But none of that is relevant anymore. Because Rav is going to offer an alternative explanation for the sheet of Rabbi Meir with an ukimta. The Gemara is not going to be so comfortable about this ukimta. But in any event, the ukimta is that we're talking about a man was Makadosh and Isha Bekosnos Kahuna Shalbal, big day Kahuna, before they became disintegrated from Rov Shimush. So they're still Ru'uyos Lavodas HaKohanim, and there's no Isa Me'ilah. I'm talking about Shogeg. Hol v'nitnu le'hanas mehen. When they were Magdish Big Day Kahuna, and for sure the Ketones, they had in mind that if any of the Kohanim would be Nene and enjoy the benefit of this garment, B'Shogeg, there's no violation of Isa Me'ilah. We can't expect that, from the very second that the Kohen finishes his avodah, he strips himself of the ketones. I mean, he's going to wear the ketones, and he's going to be nene from the ketones. So since we know up front that he's going to be nene, it's inevitable that he'll be nene from the ketones. Therefore, they make a t'nai at the time of the Hagdasha that it should not be me'ilah b'shogeg. And once there was a heter on the shiga for the avodas kohanim, they were matir for shgogas acheros. And therefore, if b'shogeg he took the ketones and his makadosh and isha, they never left the rishus of hegdesh. And therefore, he's considered kidsha b'davar she'ein shalom. So the Gemara raises the following question: Toshma, I have a brisa that says kosnos kahuna shebolu molin b'hem. Only after balu is there me'ilah. Ben b'mezid ben b'shogif nene mehem is yatzu lechulin v'chayavin aleim karba milah dibur meir. My lava filu lo balu. That is me'ilah even if lo balu. So again, why did Rabbi Meir say balu? Right? It says kosnos kahuna shebalu. He wanted to teach us that even if it's Eino Roy Lavoda, nevertheless lo pakamem kidushasam umolim b'hem. But in any event, it comes out that even in a case of lo balu, there is Me'ilah. And that's against Rav, because Rav said that according to Rabbi Meir, so Ketonels, Shalo Balu, Ein Me'ilah B'Shogeg. Because that's the way the Tanai they made the Tanai because Lo Nitna Torah L'Malach Yasharis. So Gemara says, "Lo, that's not what Rabbi Meir had in mind." But Balu Dafka. When does Rabbi Meir say Molim B'hem? That's only in the case of Balu. They're not Ruyas Lavoda, and now the Tanai of Hol V'Nitnu Lihenos Mihen, because we're not Malach Yasharis. That Tanai no longer applies because it's already Big Day Kahuna Shabalu, and it becomes like other Cheftei Hegdesh, where there's Me'ilah B'Shogeg. We only lifted the Me'ilah B'Shogeg as long as he's using these begadim because they're Uyas Lavoda, for the Avoda. Now the Gemara raised another objection to Rav from a Mishnah at the very beginning of Masechet Shkolim. The Echad B'Adar Mashmir Machrizim Al Ashkolim. 1 month before Echad B'Nisan, we need to bring Karbanas Sibur from the Truma Chadasha. We can't use last year's. Is therefore already on Aleph Adar. They announced that they should begin to bring their shkolim. So a month in advance, because in the Beis Hamikdash was a kupa, which is taklin chadatin, shkolim chadoshim, and all the shkolim chadoshim that were given from Aleph Adar and on, they would place in that kupa. There was another kupa that was taklin atikin, shkolim yishonim, and that's where they put shiklei truma from last year's contribution. Toshma, we learned in a brisa, as far as the dinim b'shkolim, molin b'chadatin, in the most of the Truma Chadasha that were earmarked for Karbanas Tzibur from the month of Nisan and on, they are designated exclusively for a carbon. And therefore, it's Shaykh Me'ilah. But Ein Molim Batikin, most Yishanim that were given last year, their obligation is related to last year. And not only that, we don't use these mos from last year for karbanos. We use them for oros, shiori alishka. We use them for binias chomas Yerushalayim migdol seah tikun sharet sarchei ha'ir. Rabbi Meir Omer Malim b'shiarei halishka. Even though, again, as we said before, the mos are not designated for karbanos. So Gemara asks, according to Rav in Rabbi Meir, lefish lo nitna Torah l'malachi ashares, and the ketones kahuna were given over for hana in a case of shogeg. Is Hamai. Why does Rabbi Meir say that there's Me'ilah in Mos Shiaria Lishka, even in the case of Shogeg Nemo? Why don't we say Hol v'nitnu lehanos lefi Shelo nitna Torah Malachi Ashores. Now, why is that principle of lo nitna Torah Malachi Ashores relevant to Shkolim? Deha chomas ha'ir umigdiloseha mishiori alishka as. So when they built the walls around the city and the citadels and so forth, they used mows from the Shiori al-Lishka. Tisnan, the fourth parak of Shkolim, Chomas ha'ir umigdloseha b'chol shar tzarkei ha'ir. Boy mishiori al-Lishka. And since it's impossible to be actually completely protective and meticulous, making sure, guaranteeing that no one gets hana from the sale of the choma. Therefore, nitna hachoma lehenos bitzila b'shogeg. You can have benefit from the shade that is offered by the choma. And therefore, they now undermined and negated the halacha of me'ila in Mos Shari Alishka because lo nitna Torah lemalachi ashares for the sale of the choma is therefore batla me'ila lechol hanos hashogeg. Once one hanos is excluded from me'ila, all the hanos are excluded from me'ila. So we see clearly, says the Gemara in the Kasha, that Rameir doesn't hold that whole v'huter b'makom ha'hechrech huter ashar. So Rabbi Meir holds that there is me'ila in shiori alishka, and we're not going to apply the principle that we applied to, that Rav applied to Kusnos kahuna, that if a Kohen is nene mehem b'shogeg, is batla mehem me'ila, even for shar shgagos, like for example, if he's Makadish and Isha. So why does Rabbi Meir hold that molim b'mos shiori alishka? After all, we can use the mos of shiori alishka for the chomas ha'ir. And as far as the sale is concerned, we're going to say yefshali lizar mehem. And nitna choma lohanis mitzela b'shogeg. So the mos of Shari Alishka already have a certain element of bittul. So why don't we say that it's a bittul me'ila? Why don't we apply the principle according to Rabbi Meir, bittul me'ila for all anos? And yet Rabbi Meir says molim b'Shari Alishka. I'm not 100% comfortable with this analogy that the Gemara is making to drum up this kasha, but let's see how the Gemara deals with it. Lo tema Rabbi Meir ela ema Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara actually accepts this analogy. Okay. Toshma I have another objection against Rav Desanya. We learned in the Brayso Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak, Avne Yushalayim. Right, the Chomas, Yushalayim, and the Migdolos that are made of stone, Shenoshru, they fell apart, Molim Bahem. If somebody gets Hanofra, he's Chayv Mishum Ve'ilu V'Yotzaluchu and Divrei Meir, and now we don't understand, according to Rav, why don't we say that since Botlu, Mimos, Shiore, Lishka Me'ila, as far as Sel Chom is concerned, so therefore Botlu Mimenu Me'ila L'chol Ano Shalhen, like we saw by Kusnos, according to Rav. So why is that B'shogig Molabem, according to Rabbi Meir? And once again, the Gemara says, Lo Tema Rabbi Meir, Ela Ema Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara rejects this. Rabbi Yehuda, Yushalayim Mimakacha. According to Rabbi Meir, is there Kedusha to the Avnei Yushalayim Vasnan? We learned in the Mishnah in Darim Daf Yudam and Beis, Ha'omer Harei Kikar Zu Asura Be'anoa Lai Ke'imra, which is a seshel carbon tamid, or Kedirim, like a deer behemel shekdishu lekarbono, so deer avatze hegdesh, ke'etzim shalmaroch al gabi mizbeach, ke'ishim alavos esh shalom mizbeach, ke'hechol the hechol of beis hamegdash ke'mizbeach Yushalayim kavnei Yushalayim. In all these, even though he didn't mention the word carbon, nevertheless it's as if he was matvis his neder in a carbon, and the kikar is also. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kala Omer, if he's matvis nidaro, the Avnei Yushalayim Lomer Klum, and the kikar remains heter. So the Gemara argues that according to Rabbi Yehuda, it should not be nesar, because he's matvis the neder b'dovra mutar, because Avnei Yushalayim don't have Kiddushin. So we cannot interpret this brisa that says Molim the Avnei Yushalayim according to Rabbi Yehuda, as the Gemara tried to do earlier. V'chi Taman, if you'll tell me to explain the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that there is Kiddushin in the Avnei Yushalayim, why isn't the neder chal? Mishum d'lo amar ki Yerushalayim. He didn't add the chaf adimyon. He said arei zeh alai Yerushalayim. And that's not a lashon of atfasa that could be affected. So we cannot interpret it. For Tanya, and the Brisa clarifies the din of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Omer ki Yerushalayim lomar klum ad sheyidar b'davar hakarev Yerushalayim. According to Rabbi Yehuda, when he says ki Yerushalayim with a chaf adimyon, then it's lo Omar Klum. Because there's no Kedusha in the Avnei Yushalayim. And those brisos that insist that there's Me'ila even be Atikim, and Avnei Yushalayim that fell out of place, Molim Bohem, that doesn't stem. That doesn't work out according to the Gemara's answer that was given earlier, according to Ra. And the Gemara answers here on the top of the Dalanam and Beis, and with this we'll conclude. Trei Tanoi Ninu al Liba de Rabbi Yehuda. There are two Tanoim that disagreed in the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Is there Me'ila and Avnei Yushalayim? Is there not? And the Brisos that quote Rabbi Yehuda as saying that there is Me'ila, even in Atikim, that's Avnei Yushalayim Shen Nashru. They hold that according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's Kiddushin and Avnei Yushalayim. And Rav accepts their opinion. Now, the next part of the sugya here, which we don't have time for today, explains with another explanation the opinion of Rabbi Meir that if you're magdish behegdish b'shogeg, Eina Mekudeshes Mishum Kiddushay Tos, which is what we saw earlier in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, then, so here's where we're going to stop on the top of Daf Nun Dalid Amid Beis, which Baruch Hashem, we're a little bit ahead of the Daf Yomi, which is always great. And I wish you a good night.